Hello everybody, my name is James Fox, a Sport Officer with Scout in Ireland. If you've been following our webinars, you'll be disappointed to hear that the man from the West, Noel Leahy, won't be emceeing this evening, and you're stuck with me, I'm afraid. This webinar will be slightly different to the previous ones, and there'll be less discussion based and more presentation style. In saying that, there will be a questions and answer session near the end, so if you have any questions, please type them up in the questions and answers icon you'll see there on your laptop. And hopefully we'll get through a good few of these later. We plan to keep to the hour like the other webinars, and if there's any questions that we haven't dealt with, I suppose, through the on the webinar, then we'll do up a frequently asked questions document after and send it out in the coming weeks. Joining me this evening is Aidan Magner, core team chairperson of the Volunteer Resource Management and Group Support Department. Aidan also scouts locally with 68 Court, Calais. Also from that department core team, we have Rachel Brennan, and Rachel is the County Commissioner for Wexford Scout County and also scouts locally in 2nd Wexford, Clifford Street. We also have Gail Scanlon, from 5th Carlow Town Scout Group, who have recently gone through the registration process, and Gail will outline their experience with the process with the Charities Regulator. Welcome Aidan, Rachel and Gail, and thank you for participating in this webinar.
Thank you.
Supporting us in the background is Jerry Hickey, the PSO from the Northeastern Province. This evening, as I said, it's going to be slightly different. We're going to be working off a presentation, so I'm going to share that now with everybody, and we'll go from there. So there it is there now. So the outline for this evening comes under the following headings. What we will cover in the webinar, and more important, I suppose, what we won't cover, and maybe on that, when we will cover that stuff, let's say. How we got here, responsibility and the main duties of the trustees of the Scout Group, the registration process with the regulator, what supports are available for groups to do the registration. We'll also go through, as I said, the experience of a Scout group registering. We have a questions and answer sessions, and then what's next for groups. So as I said, if you have any questions, make sure you put them up in the questions and answer session, and we'll deal with them later on. Okay, so what we will cover. So we'll cover trustee responsibilities, what's in the registration pack, and the next steps that groups should take to continue this process. What we won't be covering is the specific questions on the trustee insurance. We have had a number of questions in regarding trustee insurance, and we've actually dedicated them questions into another webinar for the future for a future date in the next couple of weeks. We hope to have this before Christmas, so hopefully we have this date out very, very soon. Also, what we won't be covering is information on registering as a CLG. There's a number of circumstances where a group would register as a company rather than as an unincorporated. But for the vast majority of groups, we're recommending that they're registered as an unincorporated entity with the Charities Regulator. Okay, so I'll pass you on now to Aidan, who's going to go through the next slide.
Okay, so hopefully you can hear me there, James. Yep. Thank you very much for inviting me to come in here. So I suppose the first question we ask is, how did we get to this point? And it all started with the Charities Act of 2009. So within Scouting Ireland, then we started looking at the process in 2014. And across then 2014 through 2018, there was numerous levels of engagement and consultation. I believe there was various AGMs, county conferences, provincial conferences. So there's a lot of consultation across that period. And then in 2018, between AGM and EGM, it was approved to transition to a company-only organisation, and a new board was actually formed at that stage. So that happened on October 6th, 2018. At that EGM. So as from that date, then we set out the new structure. Part of that proposal then is that each Scout group would register as its own charity entity. So if you can move there, James, thanks. So within that then, we have to look at what the duties of the trustees actually are. So when we look first of all at the change that was involved was that the group council members would effectively become the trustees of the charity. And this meant that the group council outlined in our constitution would form the basis of our trustees. So that's group leader, group secretary, the group chairperson, the quartermaster, treasurer, youth champion, and you can have a member, any other member over the age of 18. So that identifies 7 people who can be resolved or who can be involved in this process. And ideally, we're looking for 5 people to come forward to form the group of trustees. So then what are the duties of that trustee? So it's to comply with the governing document. And essentially, there's no additional resources involved in this one. It's about standardization and formalization of what are already the Scouting Ireland templates and formats. So there's really no huge extra burden on us from that perspective. Carrying out its charitable purpose through Scouting. So again, we are a Scouting organisation. Our purpose is here to serve the youth members. So fundamentally, the role of a charity is to actually carry out that purpose. Act in the best interest of the group with reasonable care and skill. So again, we have to take a look and make sure that we are representing the group, representing the what we're acting as trustees for with the best care and skill that we can. Manage the assets of the group. Again, be in the same ways we currently do, accounting for those, making sure that they're in good state at all times, and that we're actually managing properly. As we currently do, and no change, is proper bookkeeping and make sure that the accounts are submitted on an annual basis. So again, we do this every year anyway, so it's not it shouldn't be a huge burden for us going forward. And then there may be some additional duties as outlined in their guidance documents. So again, they're the sort of things that as it comes up, we'll be able to work through. So with that, I'll pass over to Rachel.
Thanks, Aidan. Good evening, everyone. So next what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at the process to becoming a registered charity. So I suppose to support with the registration process, Scouting Ireland have actually put together a number of resources that groups can use to prepare and submit the application. So on the 11th of November, a mailing was sent to all groups with a number of documents attached and referenced. So we're recommending that as a first step, the groups look back at the info pack document, which outlines all the required documents, local policies, and information that is needed to submit an application. If you can't find that email or the location of the pack documents on the Scouting Ireland website, please contact your local support staff member or send an email to the dedicated email address, and we'll take a look at that email address shortly, and then you'll be guided where you can find the relevant pack and information. The pack actually contains a number of editable PDF documents, and that allows the Scout group to easily complete their unique information within those documents. Again, if you're finding you're having any difficulty with the documents, contact your support staff member and they'll be able to assist you with that. The pack has actually been designed along with a step-by-step guide to ensure that the registration process is made as easy as possible for everyone to be able to undertake it. And James has actually also previously undertaken some short videos that are available to watch as well, showing you how the documents are filled on the step-by-step guide. So again, it's something else you can take a look at there as well. The next step, I suppose, after that is for the group council to meet and put in place the policies required for the benefit of the Scout group to ensure that the registration process is actually able to be undertaken. As part of the pack, you'll notice reference to documents such as your group safeguarding policy, safeguarding statements, safeguarding risk assessment. These policies should already be in your group's possession, as they were required for the TUSLA requirements back in 2019. However, if you can't seem to locate them or you're unsure on other documents, for instance, maybe your risk assessment, again, contact the Scouting Charity email address or your support staff member and they'll be able to locate those documents for you and send them on. Following on from your group council meeting, it will probably bring to light some additional information or documentation that needs to be completed before proceeding. So the information might simply be pulling together the details of the trustees to be registered, gathering the bank details for any of the accounts that you have, or maybe just putting down on paper the group fee description. It might be something you have in place but you haven't actually written down. So take the time to ensure that you gather all the relevant items so that you can tick every box required for the registration process. So registering with the charity regulator is done through the charity regulator online portal. It is each group's responsibility to undertake setting up their own online portal account. And this is something that can be done in preparation of the registration. So if the group wishes, they can go ahead and start that part now. Just please ensure to take careful note of the username and password that you use when you're setting up the account, as these will be required when you're logging in to complete the actual registration or logging in anytime in the future as well. So once you've set up your online account and your group is happy that you've gathered all the necessary documents, policies, you can use the step-by-step guide that was issued to complete your registration. So when you're undertaking this element, just ensure to let your support staff member know that you're beginning it, just so they can touch base and they can actually be there to support you as required. They can touch base and see how you're getting on and things like that. Once the application is actually submitted, you should then receive an email confirmation of its submission. So ensure that the email address used for the online account is one that is easily and frequently accessed by whoever is looking after the registration application for your group. It's to be expected that there will also be some back and forth, I suppose, with the charity regulator before your registration process is completed. It's hoped that a lot of the previous charity regulator queries have actually been ironed out from the first set of applications that have been submitted and successful, but they may still come back with just little queries, just back to you maybe personally or on larger items. So just as mentioned there, just to make sure that that email address that's linked with the account is actually checked regularly and that the queries or any alterations that are required, that they can be kind of dealt with swiftly, so it won't delay your registration process. It's each group's responsibility, as I said, to take control of their progress in this process. So Scout in Ireland doesn't know which groups have created that online portal or begun the registration application. So that's why it is important just to keep touching base with the support staff so they know that they should be there to help you out and support you as you go along the process. The final part then, once all the documents have actually been successfully submitted and accepted by the CRA, then is the issuing of the registered charity number. So that's an official letter will be sent out when you receive your CRN number. Once the CRN number is issued, your registration is complete with the charities regulator. Okay, can we move on there, James? Perfect. So just take a look at some of the supports that are available to you, the groups, now as you're undertaking all this. So as I previously mentioned, highlighted in the last slide, the information pack that was issued is a valuable support for all the groups and we're preparing for and undertaking the charity regulator registration. So the pack is there so that no group needs to go off, complete the required documents for the CRA all on their own. You're not starting from scratch, they're there for you. So ensure to read through all the contents of that pack thoroughly before starting into the application. As I also mentioned, there have been some videos recorded by James. They outline the pack documents and also the step-by-step guide. So do take a look at these videos just for some extra guidance to go along with the information pack. Likewise, there's previously mentioned, there is another support line, and that is the dedicated Scouting charity email address, which is charityregistration@scouts.ie. So if you have any queries or you're unsure when completing an element of the policies or the documentation, please send an email in and the team will get back to you and to help you with any of the issues that you might be having. Again, your support staff, they're an invaluable line of support when undertaking the process, no matter what stage of the process you're actually at. So the support staff, they've been involved with the charity regulator process for some time, so they are very familiar with it and the contents and the requirements. So don't be afraid to give them an email or a call or something like that if you're stuck on any element or just not sure where to go for something. So it's also our peer network of registered groups. It's constantly growing week on week. We're seeing more groups become registered charities. So please contact again your support officer or your county to find out if there's a local Scout group that has become registered. Like you can see here tonight now when Gail presents her experience with us, those who've completed the registration process are one of our most valuable supports, and they've been in your current situation, they've undertaken the process and they've successfully ventured to the other side. So their positive experiences and their pitfalls as well. They're a great source of knowledge and experience for us all to explore. And I suppose finally then the charity regulators themselves, they're there to help you too. They're not there to catch any groups out, they're not there to trip you up. They're there as a support, they'll support you like any other organisation that falls underneath them. And if you do have any queries, feel free to touch base with them directly. Keep an eye out for any training or updates they provide. And I suppose they just want to get you through the registration process as much as you want to get through it yourself. So don't forget that they're also an extra support for you in this process. Okay, that's all for me. So I'll pass you over to Gail now. I'm just going to take you through the next section.
Okay, thank you very much, Rachel. Just unmute myself there. So, hello everybody. So we were, Fifth Carlow Town Scout Group was registered with the Charities Regulator just back in September there. And so the first thing I'm going to talk about is what position we were in before we started the process. So going back about 2 years ago when we first adopted the Constitution, at that time we put new governance structures in place to kind of prepare ourselves for the registration and get ourselves used to the concepts of having trustees and a group council and a group assembly and the trustees meeting. So that proved invaluable really, because it's given us a lead-in period, and in terms of managing expectations within the group, that's been very useful. Shortly after that as well, we wrote a set of standing orders and adopted them at an AGM, and some of the content of our standing orders would have made completion of the pack easier, because we would have dealt with things like concessions in our membership policy when we were writing our standing orders. So the other thing that we did ahead of schedule is, as that whole corporate governance process was being rolled out, I would have brought back to group assemblies all of the governance documents and PowerPoint presentations and things like that that had been presented to us, and gone through them locally as well. And it bore repetition, because there was a lot to take in. So by the time that it actually came around to actually registering, I think everybody in the group was very familiar with the terms and very familiar with what was going to happen, and understood the rationale for it. So then, in terms of best practice and preparing for best practice in terms of the governance, we had formed a parents and friends support group a couple of years back there, and had some very good and strong associate members. So some of them, 2 of them came on board as our group secretary and our group treasurer. And I think that's made for a very strong independent voice on our group council, a lot more objectivity. It's not just scouters, because we do look at things from a particular perspective. So that was very helpful. And the other thing that we had undertaken was that we participated in the QSE process. So that was very helpful, I think, for getting everybody into the mindset of thinking a bit more strategically and beyond the programme to a sustainable and ambitious model for securing the future of the group. And we did a skills audit as well at that time amongst the Scousers to see what experience there was out there that we could co-opt into helping us. So in terms of concerns there, I mean, there were a lot of concerns around what would the workload be involved in this, and maybe concerns around the additional responsibility, and would there be communication issues here between and like an us and them being created between the group council and the group assembly. So it's been very important to maintain good communications, and I think all the preparation and the work that we had done before put us in a very strong position not to have too many problems around that particular area. But that is a really key thing to get right, and you have to continue to work at it, absolutely. So then, in terms of how we found the documents and everything that was provided, one thing I really can say to everybody is this is not something to be scared of. This is not a scary process at all. The pack that you will get really just makes everything so streamlined and so straightforward. And there might have been 1 or 2 little very, very small teething issues with PDFs and stuff that have all been sorted out now. So it really it really is an idiot's guide to how to register with the charities regulator. It just makes everything so streamlined and straightforward. So what we did was we went through the pack, and between the members of the group council, we kind of divided up who would prepare the various documents between us. So it was mostly the secretary, the treasurer, and myself that worked on that, and it didn't take a whole lot of time because, as I said, we had a good process in place beforehand, and much of it was around describing existing custom and practice within the group, for example, around the membership arrangements and the concessions that we made, and just transferring them in written form into a policy. And the other thing that we did then, once everything was uploaded and it had all been accepted and everything else, our secretary put all of the documents into a ring binder and left them in the den, so that anybody who wanted to peruse them and have a look at them and see them or refer back to them, they were there. So there was no mystery around any of that. And we kept those documents really, really simple. You know, they didn't have to be an epic. We just kept it very simple, very descriptive, and that worked for us, because the only query that I had back from the charities regulator was around some terminology in our financial statement. And subsequently, when I've been going back into the portal and had to do one or two things and wasn't quite sure about it, when you contact the staff there in the charities regulator office, they're really so helpful and just make everything so simple for you. And I couldn't. Their customer service is excellent. So then, suggestions for future registering groups. Well, one of the things I would say is the preparation beforehand is if you can do some of that, it's very good. It will make life easier. When you go on to the Charities Regulatory Authority website, you can see the governance code there, and they've got a toolkit there as well. So even before you register, any member of the public can go on and have a look at that. And I would encourage everybody to go and do that, because it's very accessible and very easy to read, and it'll really help you through that process. The charities regulator also runs something called Trustees Week and online training, which I've participated in some of, and it was very useful and very good as well. And the other members of our group council participated in that as well. Take your time and get it right. Don't be rushing any of it, and talk to a group, as Rachel said, who have gone through the process. But really, my main takeaway is this is very straightforward. There's loads of help there. I think that the Scout in Ireland have put a really good supports in place to help groups going through this progress. I registered another charity a couple of years ago there without any of this help, and it was much more challenging. So that's it for me.
Thanks very much, Gail. Appreciate that, and thanks very much for giving your experience on registering the group and that. It's invaluable stuff there and that. We're going to now go through some of the questions and answers, and my colleague Jerry Hickey is going to go through some of them questions then.
Yeah, we've a couple of questions here. Just one from Declan. The slide says that additional duties outlined in their guidance document. This perhaps oversimplifies, as the trustees have all the duties of a board of directors. Who might like to take that one?
I'll take that one actually, because I think there is a bit of confusion around the different entities that you can register as a charity and that stuff. And I kind of touched on it earlier with the CLG and the unincorporated and that stuff as well. So I suppose when you're when you're going through some of the training with the charities regulator and that kind of stuff, they see a charity as one, and they're trying to cover all the different entities and that. But there is different obligations, I suppose, on unincorporated trustees and a board of directors as well. And also, I suppose there's extra obligations on the board of directors when you register as a CLG, because you're also registered with the CRO, and obviously the legal obligations that come under that as well, the company registered office. So it is outlined in the document, the guidance for the charity trustees, and I'll include that in a link to that in the frequently asked questions document.
Yeah, another one here, again from Declan. I believe we will be required to meet the SORP standard for accounts as charity trustees. I'm not familiar with the term SORP. It's obviously an accounting term. Is that a fact, or is there a particular standard they have to be brought to the accounts?
Well, as far as I know, Jerry, on that one, SORP is, I think it's a statement of recommended practices, and it is linked, and it just identifies exactly what we need to do. And it's all about transparency. It's all about making sure that the accounts are absolutely transparent. Identifying, streams of income, legacy, trustees, anything that comes from it. So it's ensuring that there's transparency in place. And I think, James, you've done a huge amount of work in ensuring that the standards and templates that we're working to will actually comply against that. So again, taking Gail's point on board, I'm sure that the help that we will receive from the CRA will be hugely beneficial to us in that.
Yeah, and also on top of that, Aidan, thanks, is that there will be, I suppose, a second pack sent out in the next couple of months regarding the annual returns that groups will have to submit after their first financial year end and that kind of stuff as well. So they will include a number of templates, and that will have some things pre-populated for groups to make it as easy as possible to do that kind of end of the process as well.
Okay. I have three. I've got three more questions. Sorry, just beg your pardon. I've got three more questions. The nub of which really are insurance issues.
Jerry, I saw them and that coming in. So I know Connor had a few of them there and that kind of stuff. So what I'll do, they will probably be covered under the next webinar with the insurance company, let's say, and that kind of stuff. Connor, you also said I sent an email to the charity registration email address there. I think it was today. So I hope to reply to you on a number of them things yesterday. But a lot of the questions, I suppose, regarding around the trustee insurance will be covered in the next webinar, hopefully in the next 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah, I think maybe no harm, James, just to outline the key points that Connor was making. One is to do with responsibility towards GDPR. And that within the group, and as to whether leaders will be indemnified in this regard. The second one really is to do with risk assessments for activities and that type of thing. Can the trustees be held liable for that? And then the third one is compliance with external. It would seem to me, the way I read it, compliance with external compliance issues, i.e. the health and safety of a building that you're using, and things like that. Now that's a very, very brief synopsis of the three areas that Connor was asking, but I think they require a more detailed answer, because actually within each of the questions there's probably 2 or 3 sub questions as well.
Yeah, and I think it'd be better off leaving it to the insurance
Yes.
companies to answer them and that kind of stuff as well. I saw a few of them actually coming in myself, Jerry, there on what is the deadline? What is the deadline that we have to work to? So maybe Aidan, you could answer that one and that kind of stuff. There was originally. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, there was, as we migrated through COVID, we saw a deadline that was originally put up at the start of the process. And I suppose at that stage we were talking about doing bulk uploads, all meeting in hotels, being able to, do entire counties on a given day. But because of COVID and everything else, that has completely changed in the sands of time. We then saw a date shift through to December, and we know that is shifting in time. So what we do know at this point in time is that the CRA has said that they can process about 30 applications per month. Okay. And as Gail was outlining there, we'll have different states of readiness. And I suppose what we need to do is we need to manage the flow of groups so that we're kind of getting that 30 applications per month. Groups that are ready earlier, will be coming forward earlier. Groups that still need some bit of time will be able to almost get into that orderly queue behind it. So if you're working on a premise of 30 per month and approximately 500 groups, we're looking at almost a natural deadline there of about the next 18-20 months time frame. So there's no hard deadline as we see it right now, but there is that requirement to keep the channel flowing and keep the information flowing.
Okay, I have a couple more questions coming in there. From Adam, can you clarify the accounts requirement further, please? Do professionally audited accounts need to be submitted or not? I think you mentioned that earlier, James.
Yeah, and I think I'll pass this over to Rachel, if that's all right.
Yeah, no problem. So I suppose for the purpose of registration, all the groups need to provide is an income and expenditure totals for their previous financial year, which is their most recent account. So going forward with the financial returns, there is a threshold of €100,000 that groups will need to have their accounts audited if they're above that. But this is actually in the process of being changed to €250,000. So I suppose hopefully in the future, once that's changed, most groups won't actually fall into that category of having to have their accounts audited.
Okay, and then just another one on accounts here. In terms of financial year accounts, will this now change to January to December? Considering all financial years in groups at the moment are at the end of August.
I'll take that one actually in that. So no, there's no need to change your financial year end, which is the 31st of August. So it'll stay that. The charities regulator have no issue with that. It doesn't have to be a standardised January to December. And what will have to happen, I suppose, is there have to be an annual returns within 10 months of your financial year end. So for, let's say a group that registers in January 2021, their first financial year end will be the end of August 2021, and then they'll have to submit some annual returns, which will include their financial returns before the end of June 2022. So that's the first time they'll have to submit them. And by then, as I said earlier, we'll have a few a pack ready to go that'll have templates for this and that stuff. But the template that we actually have currently with the annual accounts, which is the one you would have sent on to your county treasurer, and they sent it on to the provincial treasurer, and they sent it on to Scout in Ireland. That's already a template agreed with the charities regulator. There's no issue with that template at all. So the template would stay the same, and the financial year end is going to stay the same as well.
Okay, another question in there, slightly different in its tag from Anonymous. It says, what happens if not enough groups sign up? Aidan, maybe you take that one.
It's a very interesting question. I suppose from the charities regulator perspective, they look at every group as being individuals. So they're not doing a total percentage of total. So it would become an internal issue for Scouting Ireland as to how to manage it. So I suppose what we'll do is we'll just manage that over time, review it, make sure that we have the flow of groups coming through. For groups that are struggling to come through the process, as the likes of Gail, as we get that experience, as we get the relationship with CRA, which is already strong, and keep building on that, we'll be able to bring groups through and be able to show and facilitate a very easy transition.
Okay. And followed up on that, James, I know you did the sums on this today. How many groups have signed up so far?
So there is 16 groups that signed up so far. So one or two groups had already signed up before we started this process, and then we had the first tier that started pretty much just at the start of September, and Gail's group would have been part of that first tier, and so there's about 14 of them groups that have actually signed up so far. A number of them came in there actually just there on the 30th of November there, and it's a huge achievement for them groups and that kind of stuff as well. There was a bit of work to it, obviously, in that, but it's a huge achievement for them, and fair play to them in that. So there is around 16 groups signed up so far, and more working on it. And I suspect in the next couple of weeks there'll be another 10 or so.
Okay. Another one here. Just will this webinar be available as a video for those who cannot attend?
Yeah. So we, like the other webinars, this has been recorded and we'll have it up on the YouTube channel in the next couple of days. We probably have to do some tinkering and maybe touch up my face a few times and that kind of stuff as well. So just to make a to make it a bit easier on people to watch it and that kind of stuff as well. But hopefully by early next week it'll be up on YouTube and the Scouting Ireland's YouTube channel, and they'll be able to see it from there. I think we'll leave it there actually, Jerry, with the questions and that. Okay. As I said earlier, we will take all the questions, so keep asking them and that kind of stuff as well. And what we can do is print off the questions after, and we'll create another document, a frequently asked document with all the questions from the webinar, and get that out to groups in the next couple of weeks and that kind of stuff as well. So thanks very much for questions, and keep them coming. So for the next, so what's next for the groups? And Gail touched on this earlier for my first point, would be that the group's internal structures, I suppose, she mentioned that there's a good bit of work done before actually starting the registration process and that. And it's important that groups are in a good position with their group council, and a group assembly, and the communication in the group and that kind of stuff is going well, and a good position to start this process. If you find that you're maybe not at that place just yet, maybe get talking to your support staff member and talking to your county, and they're probably in the best position to be able to point you in the right direction and how to put these things in place. Then obviously the group council meet and go through the pack and start putting the policies together. As most groups will probably have a lot of the policies in place, but maybe not written officially, let's say, and that kind of stuff as well. So it's a matter of them sitting down, talking it through and going, okay, that's what we do. Now we have to just write it down and put it in the policy. And once you have all that stuff ready to go, then contact your support officer, who'll probably be in contact anyway on a regular enough basis, to go through where you are and to start maybe the submission on the online portal. And then complete the registration process with support if needed. As some groups will go through it no bother. Some groups will need more support, and that's no problem. We have support there as we've outlined before. Okay, that's kind of the end of.
Just maybe one last one, James. I know you mentioned it earlier. Just one last question here. It says, can you explain the difference between incorporated and unincorporated, and the benefits of each and why you're recommending one over the other? The back end of that is probably quite long, but the front end basically, I suppose, the difference between just a straightforward charity and a company.
Yeah, and maybe I can go through more detail in the frequently asked document as well. But I suppose the company, the difference between the company and with the CLG and the unincorporated. So the CLG will have to register with the CRO, which includes more legal obligations with reporting to them and that kind of stuff as well. There is
CRO being the company registrations office.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And an unincorporated, which is more the association and that kind of stuff as well. And I wouldn't be a complete expert in it, and there's probably people on this attending this webinar that possibly have more experience than I do and that kind of stuff as well. And I'm more than happy to take the advice of them and that as well. But we are recommending, and the charities regulator, from where we are, where we came from with the association and Scouting Ireland to where we want to go, they're recommending that groups register as unincorporated, and that it's less legal obligation, and that it suits our purpose, our charity purpose, with more and that kind of stuff as well, the groups, and the connection between the Scouting Ireland company and the charity Scout groups, which the relationship is defined within the group charter. Okay, so as I said, keep your questions coming, but that's going to conclude our first webinar on the registration with the charities regulator. Remember that the next webinar, hopefully in the next couple of weeks, will be regarding around the trustee insurance and there'll be a presentation on that as well. And obviously your trustee insurance questions, what we can do is send them on to the insurance company, and hopefully they'll have the answers there in the night rather than having to go back and forth and that kind of stuff as well. I'd like to thank again our presenters, Aidan, Rachel and Gail. He's did a great job, and thanks very much for participating. He's invaluable. And thanks to Jerry as well for the background support. Thanks, Jerry. Thank you very, very much for attending, and have a safe and joy-filled Christmas. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.